All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. Tonight's episode is all about the traveling photographer and some cool travel tips to help you get the most out of your next photo adventure. This is TWiP. All right, so you know what? If you ever go on an adventure with your camera or on a trip, we tend to take more stuff than we need, and we probably only use half of it. Well, tonight we're going to talk about some tips that you can put into place now to make your next photo adventure much more successful. And here to talk about that stuff are two good friends of mine, Mr. Michael Grecco from down south in Southern California, and up north in Oregon, Mr. Joseph Linaschke. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey there.
Greetings and salutations.
Greetings and salutations. Joseph, you are always on the show, it feels like. So I'm going to start with Grecco.
Michael, hey, I think I've only been on once before. Come on.
You haven't been on in like forever, but this is the new trip. You've never done a live show like this with me, right?
That's true. And this I am a girl. You just announced this show and I bring everything. I bring the kitchen sink with me in a case. This is the show to ask when to how to pack lighter.
Well, this is perfect because you and Joseph will have conflicting and contrasting opinions on how to travel.
I can't go personally without 2 bags to a place. Come on,
you bring people with you. You're Hollywood. You bring a whole entourage. Joseph brings a bag, right?
Actually, you know what? Last time I brought people.
Oh God, this show is going off the rails already. I'm trying to get this thing. All right. Okay. So let me rephrase that. So people that are watching this show is all about how to bring as much crap with you as you possibly
can.
Exactly. There you go. Now we're talking.
So why? I mean, if you're going to check bags, right? Why not check bags? All right, Michael.
Well, at what, $75 a piece? I can think of why you don't want to check bags. But yeah.
No. Media rate, $50 a piece. And you can never travel on Delta or US Air because they don't have a media rate. Only United and American do. So
there you go. Tip number 1.
Air Canada is the worst. Air Canada charges you if your carry-on is overweight. So American Airlines media rate, but you got to be media. You got to have like a note from the magazine or the advertising company or whoever it is. So
what a mess. All right, Mike. Grecco, let's start with you, man. You know, let's do introductions. So if people don't know who Michael Grecco is, give us your elevator pitch. You know, you're at your swank Hollywood party with all the starlets and cool directors. How do you introduce yourself, when you walk up with your gin and juice?
Well, I've been a magazine shooter for a little over 20 years. So I started out my career as a news photographer, and I've specialized in magazine and entertainment work and advertising for the past 20 or so years. We try not to describe the years and actually how long they are.
Yeah, I know. But just, I don't want you to undersell yourself, because looking at your portfolio, so if people go to your website, michaelgrecco.com, right?
Two season Grecco.
2 C's, yeah. So if they go over there, they'll see pretty much a laundry list of celebrities that you shot everybody. So give us when you have to impress some beautiful person down there in Hollywood, what do you say? You say, "Oh yeah, I've shot Morgan Freeman."
Well,
and
it's my kids and family who hate it, because we'll be watching a show and I'll just go, "I shot them. I shot them.
I would too.
And I shot them. Oh, he's really nice. I shot them."
Yeah. Who's the? Well, I want to ask you. We could talk about this in private, but I want to ask you, who was the horror story? People always want to know who's the horror story. That.
And it's the typical people that you hear horror stories about. I mean, Val Kilmer's a little nuts, and
still,
this was at the beginning of his career, so I don't know. I haven't worked with him since, but Rip Torn was out of his mind, but it's they're definitely the people that you had a hard time with. But then I was at a party with a friend, and he walks over to me. He invited me to the swank. I'm not invited to the swank parties. Friends are invited to the swank parties. So we're invited to this swank party, music party. Big music writer, this guy, Benny. And he goes, Mike, that's Natalie Cole. I said, Keith, come with me. We walk up to Natalie Cole and go, Hey, Natalie, remember that bath we took together?
See, that's the thing.
And his jaw just dropped. And she's like, "Hey, how are you?"
See, this is audience, the people in the chat room that are watching this on YouTube. This is Michael Grecco. This is Michael Grecco's Michael Grecco every time you meet him. I remember going out to dinner once with you and your then girlfriend, I think. We went out to dinner once, and you are like you're Hollywood. I love it. Or you are the quintessential Hollywood photographer. You know everybody. You're in the crowd, and you know they clear tables for you. You know, it's awesome. I love it.
Except when I meet you. So anyway, I got to have Keith's jaw drop. My friend Keith's jaw drop, and but except when I'm in a restaurant with you. And I'm passing by. This is how we met. I'm passing by, and you asked me for a knife.
Wait, no. You gotta go back. You gotta go back.
I have heard this story.
You gotta go back. You gotta tell the
wore
story.
A black jacket and a white shirt.
No. I'm at Adobe. I was working at Adobe at the time. Meanwhile, let's put this in context. Dude, so this is like 10 years ago at least or something.
Yeah, I'm crashing an Adobe dinner, I think. I was invited
so it was some trade show in New York or whatever, but we were and it was an Adobe show.
It was Photo Plus Expo.
Photo Plus, and Adobe they had rented out this entire restaurant and threw a big dinner for all their A-list celebrity, important photographers. And I was just an Adobe employee. I was a marketing guy for Lightroom at the time. And I remember I'm sitting there at my table, and all the wait staff was dressed a certain way. I'm just saying. In my defense, the wait staff was dressed a certain way. Michael Grecco walks by, and I'm like, I was trying to eat my food, and there's a waiter.
A black Armani blazer, man. It was not like I didn't have a bow tie on.
You didn't have a label on it that said Armani. You had black and white on. Everybody else had black and white on. So I was like, "Excuse me, sir, can I get a knife?" Michael, I get the stare.
The person I was with looked at you and said, "You're asking Michael Grecco for a knife?"
I was like, it was classic. It was good.
To which hopefully you just kept your cool and went, "Yeah."
No, he kept his cool and he was like,
"I just said I'm not your waiter, sir."
Yes, he did, and continued walking. 10 years later, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still hearing about this. The man has the memory of an elephant. He has now forgot that incident.
I don't think I'd forget that either. That's pretty good.
That was good. Hey. All right, well, good. Well, welcome, Michael Grecco. Joseph Linaski, you're here. Photojoseph. You run a popular YouTube channel over there. You're always doing
working on
stuff. Look at that big studio you're in. What's going on with you, man?
Living the dream or trying to make one. Just working on the show. YouTube.com/Photojoseph. Doing that live thing every Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell. You know how it works.
I like
gotta hit the bell.
And you're drinking.
Yeah, doing the live show about all things photo, video, live streaming, and trying to do some work on the side to fill in the gaps. But the show is it's growing nicely. The goal is to make the show be big enough that is the main primary source of income, and allowing me to take jobs as I want or as I need on the side, but not because I have to. So that's what we're working on right now.
Love it. And you I got to give you credit because you are the guy. You are my you're like my sponsor when it comes to live streaming, because as I was getting this TWiP sort of live streaming configuration spaghetti monster put together, you were there on the phone for my 911 call. So thank you for that.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly what it is. It is a spaghetti monster. It's a bit of a nightmare.
If you saw the spaghetti
over my head here, you'd be shocked. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is crazy, but I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
It's fun.
Well, welcome to both of you guys to the show. This is good. This is going to be.
Know something? The name of the show works when it's not abbreviated. Like every time I see the logo and it's TWiP, I'm like, there's something wrong with that.
What's wrong with TWiP?
What's wrong with TWiP?
TWiP.
It's like
it's iconic, man.
Come on,
it's
CNN, ABC, BBC,
and TWiP.
Yes, TWiP. Just use it. It's a verb, like Twitter. Come on, you can use it.
All right.
All right,
Embrace
so guys, let's dive in there's actually two topics I want to cover with you guys. The first one is I've been getting a lot of mail lately. I don't know if you guys have, but I'm getting a lot of mail lately with photo contests and people asking me to participate in photo contests. I have some friends that run companies that are basically engines for photo contests. But I want to talk to you guys from each of your individual perches about photo contests in general. Before we dive into the travel photography topic, photo contests in general, are they still are they worth it for the, and Michael, we'll start with you, for the amateur or advanced amateur photographer that wants to get feedback on his or her work? Should they be entering or striving to enter photo contests? What do you think? How do you respond?
Well, I mean, okay, so just the way you frame that question makes it an interesting question.
Yeah.
I look at it from the professional standpoint to begin with, so I'll give you that standpoint. We get hit with a million photo contests too, and many people think that just getting mentioned or getting promotion in that way gets notoriety. But if the photo contest isn't appropriate, it makes no sense. I'm down to entering 3 photo contests, and one of them I enter very sparingly because there's only 2 or 3 photo contests, in my view, in the world that do anything for a professional photographer, that are taken seriously. Because for a pro, you want a contest that a client looks at, right? You want a contest that your client's going to see, and it gets you notoriety in that way. So for a pro, it's Communication Arts, it's the Photo District News, the PDN Photo Annual, and the American Photography Annual. And the American Photography Annual is very photojournalistically oriented. So I rarely enter that unless I have something that's more documentary oriented, because their whole sensibility is very documentary oriented. If I'm an amateur and want to see if my work is good, I don't think photo contests are the way to go, because you're not getting any feedback other than you won a photo contest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like it's something to strive for, right? I mean, it feels like it's like, okay, you could go out walking around your neighborhood, taking photos and showing them to friends and family. But if you have I'm taking this because I'm going to enter and win this brand new, enter the high ticket item, then it gives you kind of an impetus to get out there and shoot. You don't think there's that's valid?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't count on it as an amateur notoriety, and I wouldn't count on it for feedback. I mean, if it's an ego thing or it's fun and you're open for the challenge, and it's like running a 5K, because the way you describe it now, it's like you've challenged yourself to run a 5K and you're going to train for a 5K. Right. So in that way, yeah, it's great. But really, remember, a photo contest is only there to make the people giving the contest money.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's right.
If you unless you use it strategically, I mean, I don't even know I hope they're still in business. But there's websites like IIST. Like, if you really want feedback, there's websites like IIST where you'll get a real professional creative director or art director or photo editor who can critique your work and give you one-on-one feedback. Yep. Via audio or in a one-on-one session. So if you're looking for that, I think there's better ways than photo contests. But yeah, if you're training for a 5K, that's a good way to train for a 5K.
Yeah, give yourself a goal or a finish line. Joseph, what about you? I mean, what do you say there? Are they worth it?
I think, I certainly agree with what Michael's saying, but I think that there's the validation part of it. If you're right, you're not going to get feedback on a contest. If you either win or you don't win. And if there's 1,000 entries and one winner, then there's only one person who's going to get that validation. Everybody else just gets the opposite of that. They don't get any validation, but they also don't get any feedback. So yeah, you're not going to get the feedback that way, but it is nice to, especially as an amateur, to be able to get some type of recognition outside of your friends and family who are always going to tell you that you're great. Mm-hmm. Someone outside of all that who can say, yeah, this is a really good image. You go, wow, that's really awesome. When, I remember the very first photo contest I won, I was really young, and it was looking back, it was like a crappy photo. But I guess it was the best photo out of the class, whatever. But it was that validation at a very young age, that validation that said, yeah, you're not half bad at this. And that gave me some really good kind of fuel to move forward and say, this is something that I can push on, something I can continue with. And maybe there actually is some talent here. Maybe I'm actually kind of halfway good at this. Yeah. It's nice to get that. No matter, whenever you get validation, and it's not from people who are too close to you to be honest, it's a great thing. But I think the flip side of that is you can't enter a contest, not win, and then go, oh, well, I'm obviously crap. I'm just not a good photographer because I didn't win. Well, no, you didn't win because somebody was better than you. It doesn't mean that your image wasn't good. And it may not even be that they're better than you. It's just that the judges liked that image better for whatever reason. It could be any number of reasons.
Yeah.
But it's nice to get that little bit of validation. It's a nice thing to have, especially when you're starting out.
The other piece of that is like what Michael was saying is that it's a landmine. It's a minefield out there trying to find the right one and not getting sucked into photo contests that are their main purpose is to generate revenue, right? Of course, they want to make money, but how do you sift? How do you figure out the signal to noise ratio to make sure that you're entering a contest that has normal reasons versus nefarious reasons?
All right, but that's really good because I get a million of them, and I try to filter hundreds of pieces of mail every day in the most sophisticated way possible. I've got my own, doesn't have a lot of videos up on it, but if you go to How to Archive, I've got a YouTube channel there. And I have a mail system where I'm filtering all of this stuff into a newsletter folder because I don't want it in my inbox on my phone, basically. Mm-hmm. And I'm even if I'm not entering, I like to know what's going on and what contests there are and who's doing what. So I keep some of them even on an email basis, and I spam others. And you really got to look at both the quality of the email they're sending you, because when the email looks like garbage, it's not a contest you want to be part of, right? When the email looks like, the Miami-Dade, photo contest for butterflies, and it looks like it just is designed poorly. But then you got to go to the website. You got to look at past entries. You got to look at who's won. You've got to look at the caliber and the quality of the contest, things like that. Yeah. I mean, really looking at the past winners should give you a gauge of what's good and what's not good.
Yeah, and there's two other things I want to touch on with both of you guys before we move on to the travel stuff. And there's with these photo contests, there's there's this should I be paying money to enter this photo contest? Should it be free? And then B, let's say the usage rights that you sign away, because some of these photo contests are they're just basically like giant whales scooping up plankton to build a photo library that they're going to sell for something else. Joseph, I'll let you go first. So should they be paying, and what about the usage rights?
Well, okay, when it comes to paying, so Trevor in the chat room, and hello, Trevor, welcome, says anyone who wants you to pay to play, to be listed in a directory, or pay for wall space should be treated with skepticism. Mm-hmm. And I think that's valid. Mm-hmm. What is the intention? What is the final use of this? What are they really trying to do? And looking at the terms of their terms of use, if you submit an image into this contest and suddenly they own all the rights to your image, they can do whatever they want with it. Yeah, that's probably not okay. Right. And I know a lot of contests do that. And some of them may be doing it kind of innocently. They're not trying to do a land grab. They just want to be able to be covered so that they can promote the contest by showing your image. Look at this great image that was entered. Can you do better than this? Okay, cool. But if suddenly they have the rights because you clicked on the box that says they have the rights to do absolutely anything, including sell your image and not give you any money for it, that's not okay. So you definitely got to be careful about it. You got to read the fine print. And sometimes at that point you go, you know what, it's too much like hard work reading all this fine print. I'm out of here.
Yeah. Grecco, what do you say to that?
I'm an advocate for photographers' rights, and I've been defending photographers' licenses. I think any contest where it feels like they're building a photo library where they have the right to license to an unrelated third party, you should run as fast as possible. It's and it's something definitely worth reading what their rights are. You really have to go to just that box. It shouldn't be overwhelming. You have to read the box that says rights granted, right?
Yeah.
So that really should be there's two sections you should read: rights granted and indemnity. Like, you shouldn't indemnify them against everything. Also, if they get sued for the use of your photo, the only thing you should indemnify them for is that you're the owner of the photo, that someone else can't go back to them and claim copyright or something like that. That's the only thing you should indemnify them for. But if it looks like in the rights that they're grabbing, and Joseph was absolutely right. In a lot of cases, most contests will get enough rights so that they could use it, or people can talk about it on social media or things like that. But if they're actively relicensing the images to third parties, that's a runaway from as quickly as possible. So
yeah. I mean, we could do an entire show on photo contests and the do's and the don'ts and the wheres and all that stuff. Maybe we will in the future. But I want to move on from this. I want to remind the chat room. Thanks to all the people that are participating in the chat. I see a nice conversation in there. Remember to post your questions in there. Our community manager is in there, Christopher Berry, and he will be scraping those questions and putting them in a place where I can look at them so that we can ask them in a later segment. So if you have a question either about photo contests or travel or whatever, how Michael, got that job at the restaurant that day.
I was filling in because work was slow.
I
didn't want to admit it.
We've all had those days.
Yeah, or how Joseph managed to grow his beard like that. So just feel free to ask your questions and we'll rock it.
It's the Oregon water and beer. That's what does it.
That must be it. All right, guys, let's move on to our topic du jour, and that's all about the traveling photographer. And I wanted to keep this kind of loose and just sort of talk about your experiences and some tips and tricks for photographers that are hitting the road, whether you're just going on a vacation or something with your family, or if you are on a gig and you have paid work to do on that gig. How do you figure out what to take, how many bags, what kind of bags, how much gear, what gear, how do you safeguard it when you're there, all that good stuff. And Michael Grecco, let's start with you, man. I know you do location shoots from time to time, right? So
I do.
Let's look at that as the far other end of the spectrum in terms of, I picture you with a lot of stuff when you ship. You remind me of kind of like an Alex Lindsay, my friend Alex Lindsay, who, the baggage claim people dread when he shows up at the airport. So tell me, how do you, when you get called out for a job and you need to make sure that you can cover that job, what's the first thing that you think of? What's the first thing that you do?
Well, every job we really look at the logistics, because as Joseph mentioned before we started, is every bag's $50 or $75,
right?
And you don't want to carry more stuff than you need. So we sort of map out what we're going to need that day. And I want to preface this with, I own a lot of gear. I don't like renting gear. I like making money and billing the client for the gear I own if I can. And even in the studio, I bring my own crap. So I have my own, I have a car, I have a motorcycle that I ride, but I have an old equipment van that sits out there filled with lights and it's not filled with lights, but it's got grip equipment in it. And in the studio, we have our lights, and I'll bring them even to the studio. But when we travel, we really map out what it is. Do we have an hour? Is it one setup? Is it two setups? How many lights can we imagine do we need for each setup? Do we have extra if something breaks? And I'll either draw it out or map it out, or I'll make a list. I'll make a production list of what's needed. And I don't fly with grip equipment if I don't have to. So almost in any city, anywhere in the world, you can get, there's some sort of movie equipment that would be like C-stands and high rollers and heavy grip equipment, so that you don't have to travel with like the light stand, just bring the lights, right? So I remember shooting the Rainbow State Warriors, the Hawaiian football team for ESPN about 10 years ago. And I had a light a football team, and they wanted to shoot the football team on the beach. So the quarterback of the football team was a flamethrower, was a flame twirler.
Yeah.
So, that immediately said I had to shoot at night, and I had to light the team. They wanted the whole team with him in front. There was this great lagoon I knew I was going to shoot at that the sunset goes down on, but there's no strobe at the time. There wasn't strobe packs available on Oahu, so I had to bring for rent. I had to bring in 22 cases of strobes.
Oh my God!
But then you can rent the 20 by silk, right? So all the grip equipment you're able to get. So you literally plan out, each shoot is different, and you literally have to sit there and plan out what's needed. Yeah. I like using smaller packs. I'm not a pro photo believer. I like Broncolor and Dynamite because they're just tend to be smaller than smaller than Pro Photo. And when we're going out and doing a professional job, we're not using speed lights. I mean, we're really using professional lights.
And that's a good point. So the reason for using professional lights, and just to set the contrast here. So your Broncolor, you're talking Pro Photo stuff. Paul C. Buff over here.
so I'm Broncolor and Dynalite. I mean, I really loved. Hey, look, Dynalite for the bang for the buck. Dynalite's great gear. Broncolor's great gear. It's smaller. It's a little more expensive. Pro Photo's like the tank, right? Yeah. Their stuff is like the tank. It's really heavy. It's very expensive. Not a big fan for. They marketed themselves very well, but there's nothing special about the lighting itself.
Yeah, it's photons, right? Yeah.
What's that?
It's just photons. They're all putting out photons.
They're all putting out photons. But now, when you drop into the speed light, you're dealing with slow recycle times, the inability to run the light through modifiers and get a significant amount of light out of it, the inability to overpower the sun easily, especially through a modifier. So you're just dealing with, especially if you're on location, but even if you're in the studio, if you want to shoot at more than f4 or 5.6, people can't move around, and you have no depth of field at 2.8 or 4.
Yeah, they got like a foot to move around in, right?
Yeah, and it's like, so if you're shooting more than one person in a different plane, a speed light is already, not acceptable.
Right.
And then I've seen these rigs that you could put 4 speed lights in, and I start thinking the wiring. I mean, I came from shooting for the Associated Press and the Boston Herald, and I moved to Los Angeles to be on staff for People magazine. And I started with speed lights. The battery goes out. The one strobe doesn't see the slave. In half the shots, the strobe doesn't. The other third strobe doesn't go off. It's like, when you're dealing with real lights that are all like, radioed together and all plugged in, they work.
Yeah, so. And it goes to just, having bulletproof lights removes one more thing that the photographer, aka the director of the scene, has to think about. So Joseph, switching to the other end, right? So good. That's exactly.
I wanted to take it from the other angle for that. So that's obviously a very high end, very pro perspective, and that's awesome. And for Michael, that is what he needs. But for a lot of people, they don't have the budget for that. It's not, the job isn't high paying enough. It might not even be a job. They're just doing this for fun. So suddenly having this big, huge gear is not a realistic option. Whether you own or rent, it's just not an option. Yeah. So having things like the speed lights, and they may not always fire. You may have some issues with them, but if you own 2 or 3 speed lights, the ability to gang them together with a little piece of hardware that's going to hold them all in place together and shine those through a nice big softbox, and maybe you rent the softbox, that's pretty cool. The ability to do that, to take a bunch of small lights and put them together to make one big light, is a pretty awesome thing to be able to do. And it's great to be able to do that before, along the way towards getting to those bigger lights, if that's even ever where you're going to go. And I think it's great that we have these options. I own, like Michael, I got a ton of gear. I'm sure nowhere near as much as Michael does, but I got a ton of gear in here, and you take what you need on the road for a particular job. And sometimes when a job comes up that requires something that you don't have, you got to make the decision: do I rent, do I buy, or do I figure out how to fake it? Do I figure out how to take 3 of the existing lights that I have, put them together and make one big light, and now I can light the set the way that I need to? And that's up to you, up to the job, up to the budget, a lot of things. But I just don't want to discount the idea of taking little lights and putting them together to make something bigger, because it does work. Yeah. It's not as good, it's not as reliable, but
that's where I live. That's where I live. And I wanted to touch on just
but if one of them isn't firing for a percentage of the time because the battery goes out, and you're blowing a shoot with, Salma Hayek, it's like,
but we're not talking Salma Hayek. We're not anywhere near that level, right? We're talking about
Sam Hayek,
the beginner.
Sam,
the little guy. We're talking the low budget client, or where most people are starting off. I would say probably most people listening to the show aren't at your level, and they may strive to be at your level.
Yeah,
but
they want to be
in the meantime, before they get there, they got to make do with what they've got. They've got to make do with what they can afford. and putting together a few lights that, yeah, maybe they don't always fire. And you know what? That's part of the deal when you don't have all the toys.
Yeah. And Joseph, you just took an overseas trip and you did an awesome video with some Narbox gear and a bunch of other stuff, right? So, and you were shooting while you were out there. So when I was watching that, I was like, "What the heck did he take with him to make sure?" Because you're in a foreign country, and so I assume that there wasn't a B&H available to you for like, "Oh wow, I need this thing." How did you manage and how did you plan it?
Yeah, well, I did a whole show on all the gear that I brought, and I brought a lot on that for what I was doing, but it was still just a roller bag, a carry-on size roller bag, Think Tank Air Porter Plus or something like that. So total rollerboard size, completely packed to the gills with gear. Definitely overweight. Thank God nobody weighs these things. And a second carry-on, a small
Air Canada. They weigh them.
Yeah. Since you said that, I ain't flying Air Canada. Thank you very much. Plus a small shoulder bag, right? So those are my 2 carry-ons. That only camera gear. But that's all I needed for that. And I wasn't shooting stills. I didn't need to bring lights. Lights take up so much space. You can fill up many, many bags with lights. I didn't need to bring lights, so that certainly makes that easy. I'm shooting with the Lumix gear, so everything's a little bit smaller. So in a bag like that, I did pack, I think, 5 camera bodies and a bunch of lenses and a gimbal and all kinds of other fun toys. But yeah, it all fits in a relatively small case.
Yeah.
Make do.
But did you when you were planning to go, did you begin with the end in mind? For example, you're like, you know what, I'm doing this Narbox video, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, so here's my shot list. Therefore, the shot list is going to drive the kit that I bring with me. Or did you go Batman style and just have a utility belt and you're like, okay, whatever comes at me, I'm ready for it? Like, how'd you?
No, I had a shot list. I had I don't call it a script. It was a loose script, but we had an outline of what I was going to shoot. I had an idea of what the final video was going to be. And so I knew certain shots, I knew certain locations, and knew certain tools that I was going to want. And so I brought all of those. And I used almost everything that I brought. I was actually quite pleased at the end of it that there was very little that I didn't use. And honestly, I don't think I ever hit a point where I thought, oh, I wish I had brought that and I didn't bring it. I don't think I hit that. So I think I planned pretty well. But that is because I knew pretty clearly what I was going to be trying to shoot, what I wanted to achieve out of it, and brought the gear to get the job done.
Yeah, Michael, so switch gears with you. So you're a photographer. It's in your DNA, right? So if you're doing a production level or a high level shoot with a big budget and the football team or whatever, that's one thing. But when Michael Grecco heads out to Maui just to hang out and you want to make sure you get some good shots, what do you bring with you? What's in your normal human mortal kit? What do you?
I mean, I would just bring a simple, whatever camera du jour. With Joseph, I was sponsored by Panasonic, so I had a GH4, and I would use whatever the appropriate camera, but I would carry a DSLR. Or there are always those times that you don't have your camera with you, and it's an iPhone.
Yeah.
Right. I got the 10. The camera's great. Yeah, so
it really is.
On occasion, if I know I'm out at night and I want to get some more pictures for this project I did, this urban landscape project I did. It's in the personal work section of my website at michaelgrecco.com. It's a series of night urban landscapes when I travel. I might bring, I have a Hasselblad X-Pan. I might bring a camera that I can digitally do, side-by-side frames and composite with, which means I'll bring a tiny tripod and one of the really right stuff sliding arms so I can slide the lens back to panoramic, the panoramic point.
Yep.
But so even going on the road like that is I plan my trips.
So when you both, this is to both of you guys, you can take them individually. One of the things I worry about when I travel, especially internationally, is security of the room, because normally you get into your hotel room, you're like, okay, that part of my journey is over. I got through the airport, I got took the cab or whatever to the hotel. I'm in the hotel. and that hotel becomes your base camp, right, for your stuff. And you're like, okay, from there, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? I need this camera, this lens, or whatever. But then is that a faux, and Joseph, you go first on this. Is that a faux sense of security that your hotel room is safe? And how do you safeguard your stuff? Because you're not taking everything with you that you brought with you. What do you throw it in the safe? Do you have how do you safeguard it when you're out there?
Yeah, that's not an easy question to answer. I mean, it really depends on where you're going.
Yeah.
What part of the world you're in, what type of hotel your budget is that you're staying in.
There's always the human infestation wherever you go.
Of course. Of course. But I mean, maybe I'm being silly, but I would like to think that in a nicer, higher end hotel that there's less risk of someone walking out with your stuff than there is if you're in a hostel or in some super cheap $20 a night place in the middle of Thailand where you just have absolutely no idea who's going to walk into your room. Yeah. And fortunately, knock wood, wherever there's somewhere around here, I've never had a problem in a hotel room. I have been in places where I've gone the extra length of setting up security. Unfortunately, the company is no longer around, but there was a company that made a security camera for your laptop that turned the FaceTime camera into a security camera. So I would just set up my laptop on the desk pointing towards the door and just leave it running. And if anybody walked in, it would start taking pictures. And unfortunately, that's no longer around. You get
some nice video in the cloud of somebody walking away with your laptop, right?
Well, hey, at least you got photo evidence, right?
Yeah, what are you going to do with that in Thailand?
Well, if it's the housekeeper, then that's pretty good.
Very helpful to have.
I have to add with Joseph, though, in all the years I've traveled, I've never have to knock on wood. And I think under my very desk, there is wood under this plastic, that I've never had anything taken from a hotel room.
Really?
Ever. Yeah. But then, I do usually stay in decent hotels, and even those hotels have a safe. And if you really don't feel comfortable, give it shit to the front desk, have them lock it up.
Yeah.
Or just do take it with you. I mean, I know I have been places where I felt like, leaving it behind is not okay. So you take it with you. Well, so I got to schlep a big bag with me everywhere I go. C'est la vie. It's better to schlep it than to have it go missing.
Yeah.
But if you're traveling somewhere where this is a real concern, then I think you need to seriously consider what you're traveling with. If you're on a professional job, then clearly there's a job involved. There's insurance on the job. You've got a particular level of cost involved with this, and that cost could include anything from a safe, an extra safe in the hotel that you are paying for, up to armed security. It just depends on what you're doing and what the budget is. And if you need it, you can get it. If you need that level of protection, you can get it. Whether it's human protection or insurance protection, it's available. But if you're talking about just traveling on your own, you're on vacation, whatever, you're going to take some nice pictures. Don't bring so much gear that you have to leave it behind. I mean, it doesn't do you any good sitting in the hotel room anyway. So bring the gear that you're actually going to take out with you when you go out shooting or go out for dinner or go out and have a day with your family. And don't overpack and travel light enough that you can carry it with you and you don't have to worry about it. At least you don't have to worry about it being stolen from your hotel room.
I always wonder if it's like when I travel like that, I don't use a hotel safe because I don't trust hotel safes, but I will keep those little, easily defeatable bag or locks for your bag, and I'll leave my whatever, like my big luggage bag or whatever with all my clothes in it, and I'll lock that with all the important stuff in it, just to provide an extra level of hassle for a thief. Of course, if they want to get in there, they can cut it off, but it wouldn't be like, oh look, a nice camera, I'm going to take that. It wouldn't be that easy.
Yeah, or when you walked in that somebody
it was been tampered with,
which is really the important thing, because then it's not a he said she said. Then it's like, I had a lock on this bag and now I walk in my room and this lock is off.
Yeah,
that's really the most important part of it when dealing with the hotel. Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. I mean, I lock my bags when I travel also. Mm-hmm. I just think you have to weigh where you are. And I was just in Brazil in December. I had a gallery show there, and I taught, so I had to bring some gear. I had to bring cameras down and gear down because I did a full day workshop, and I was very clear that the hotel they put me in was decent, and I made them provide a driver.
Yeah,
I wasn't going to get in a taxi with gear. I wasn't going to search for someone to take me there. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to trust it. It's like, you make a driver show up And so hotels will do that. So if you're in a place anywhere, if you're in Indonesia, if you're in, if the hotel is decent, and hotels in like Thailand and places like that, are really Vietnam are really service oriented.
Yeah, they
right.
are. Yeah.
They're not that expensive, but they're really service oriented, and they're not expensive. So to ask a hotel to send a driver, because really your stuff is probably secure in the hotel and not getting into an indiscriminate car, or that might be the bigger risk, and depending on what city you're in, that having a driver sent is probably a good, something.
You know what I think, and and you bring up a good town to talk about, Brazil, right? And I've never been to Brazil. I've always wanted to go to Brazil. It looks fantastic. I always wanted to go to Carnival. But then, I start doing research and I hear, hey, if you bring anything of value to Brazil, you're going to get jacked, and you're going to, and all of my cameras are, quote, of value, right? So how do you navigate that, Michael? Like if people that are watching this or in chat room or whatever, they're thinking about going to Brazil. They want to go to Brazil, but they know if I bring valuable items, I may lose a limb. It's not necessarily worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just with someone when I was shooting. I was with someone on the beach shooting and demonstrating. It's like you just get really strategic about it. I mean, years ago, I remember shooting for Worth magazine, which is not around anymore. But it was a big financial thing about people who retired in Honduras because they couldn't afford, because they didn't save well enough for their retirement. And Honduras was so cheap. Well, Honduras was so cheap because there was so much criminal activity in Honduras and so much crime. And yeah, you could buy a place on the beach in Honduras, cheaply, but you went into town and you probably get like held up at gunpoint. Yeah. We actually hired security. And when you hire security in Honduras, it's like a 13-year-old with a machine gun, And it
reminds me of a Bill Burr skit.
Oh shit! Oh shit! Like, whoa! And I've been in situations like that. I remember photographing the president of Mexico, and it's same thing. It's like no one checked our bags. No one checked. Like, talk about security the other way. No one checked our bags. No one checked anything. And finally, before we walked into Salinas's office, they opened the bag to look in quickly, but didn't go through anything. And the guy who did it was another 13-year-old with a machine gun. Like, jeez. In those cases, you wonder if they even know how to use the gun properly.
I would be hoping he's been through puberty already. And those hormones have calmed down, because I don't want the itchy trigger finger. I don't know. That's crazy. Joseph, you have any advice for that? You're traveling around and or you're going to a location in the world that is known to have a high level of crime, and you're traveling there with high ticket value items. How do you manage that?
Well, again, if you, like Michael said, and I think I said before too, if you're on a job and there's budget, then you have security. Yeah. Right. That's just it. You have security, and hopefully it's something better than a 13-year-old with a machine gun.
Yeah.
And if you're just there on vacation, then don't bring the biggest, baddest camera you have. And if you are going to bring a big bad camera, don't make it obvious. If you're gonna buy the latest Canon, Nikon, Lumix, whatever camera, don't use the strap that it comes with that says "Steal Me" on it.
With Nikon expensive $.
Right. I mean, come on. Get rid of that thing.
Feed your family for 6 months.
Those straps suck anyway. I'm sorry.
They do, but they also say "Steal Me" on them. So get rid of that. The camera itself, if it's whatever brand is that's on it, you can tape that off, and that helps a little bit. It just kind of makes it a little bit more discreet. Just try not to be flashy. Try not to be obvious. Yeah. Keep it discreet, but don't make it look like you're hiding something. You just got to be casual. It's like anything else. Any town in the world, forget cameras. If you're walking down the street and you worry about getting mugged, if you're like this all the time, you're scared, you're going to get mugged. Yeah. If you walk down the street with a bit of confidence, and people are probably going to leave you alone.
Well, I grew up just over the border in suburban New York in the 70s, and my mother would say, don't look anyone in the eye when you're in the city and keep walking. This is when New York City was dangerous. You know?
Times Square was
and Joseph's right, that attitude. It's like, and you just like, you learn to like have purpose, because if you don't have purpose, that's when you get stopped.
Oh yeah.
It's like, you know, I was in Nigeria, and again, the simple thing I did in Lagos is, when walking around that day and looking for pictures and having a day off and wanting to photograph, I brought my host. We brought the host, and he was able to, you know, there's a certain amount of security. I think they had 2 people with me, and we walked around together, and people would stop you and try to, you know, you photograph that tree. Do you know that that's a sacred tree? It costs money to photograph that. Oh
God, yeah.
And the New Yorker in me, the New Yorker said, "Go fuck yourself." Like, I was just like, I was just like, no, I don't. And I don't give a shit either. And they're like, my 2 Nigerian friends were like, no, we should just keep walking.
Yeah. The machetes come out and it's all over after that.
No, I think it was kind of interesting, because they expected to engage, and then it wasn't violence, it was more manipulation, and with the attitude and the pushback and just walking away.
I mean, that's like any city, right? That's like in Chicago. I mean, that's where I'm from. And I mean, you go in some areas and you have something of value on, and people come up to you and like, hey, that looks like my Apple Watch. And you're like, I guess it is your Apple Watch. You know? Is it an Apple Watch, or I get to live to see tomorrow? The Apple Watch is going to you, you know? So,
like Michael said, listening to the hosts, that's a huge part of it too. When you're in a foreign country, somewhere that is not home to you, listen to the locals, listen to what people there are telling you, take their advice. I remember it's like late 90s traveling in South Africa, in Johannesburg. And I remember getting off the plane, my host picked me up, they take me to the hotel, drop me off, and they're like, all right, look, so don't leave the hotel. There's a shopping mall that is connected to the hotel via a walkway bridge. You can go there. There's lots of armed security there. That's fine. But don't leave the grounds. And I remember going, what? What? They go, yeah, you're white. Don't leave.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
What do you like, Joseph? You're like, but I'm an American.
Wasn't that dumb?
No,
come on.
No.
But just, I just kind of had no idea. It's like I was there for a project for the company I was working for, and I just didn't realize. And they're going, oh yeah, don't leave the hotel. They were all carrying guns. They were all armed. And we're talking people that were my age. This is almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
And these are people who are, you know, my age and armed. And that's just the way the city was then. And I, unfortunately, haven't been to Johannesburg in a long time. Hopefully it's not quite that dangerous anymore. But back then, that's the way it was. Just don't leave. Only go places with us. And, you know, trust no one.
Great, I think that's a good takeaway. I mean, the takeaway is, if you're in I guess any area, right? Like Michael Grecco was saying, you know, both of you guys are saying, walk with purpose. You know, don't walk like you're just, hey, I'm lost, you know, hey, steal my money. Walk with authority and get where you're going, and walk and be decisive. But the other thing, I want to switch gears because we're running out of time here. I want to switch gears, and the last leg of this is, if you're on a trip specifically for photography, right? Which means the bits on your memory cards or on the hard drive or whatever are the purpose of the trip. Do you back up before you jump back on that plane? And how do you do it? Joseph, why don't you go first? How do you handle that?
Oh God, yeah. Backing up often and multiple times. So yeah, if these are critical images, critical video, then if you've got your laptop, easy, copy them to the laptop. There's a copy. Probably have an external drive as well. Copy them to that. So now you got a third copy. And that's assuming you're not deleting your memory cards. If you have to wipe your memory cards, then you really want to have 3. You know, it's the old backup mantra. If it doesn't exist in 3 places, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You should have your primary, a backup that is local, and then a backup that's offsite. When you're traveling, that offsite backup can be really hard to do. If you are lucky enough to be somewhere where you have high-speed internet, then perhaps you can be uploading your stuff to a service like Backblaze or you know, whatever any of the cloud backup services are, and that's great. But if you don't have that, then at minimum putting it on an additional hard drive that you ship home or ship back to the studio separately, drop it in a FedEx envelope and let that go separate from you, is a great way to go. Even if you're on a long job, a long trip, you can drop multiple drives, you know, take a stack of drives with you, and just every couple of days or once a week or whatever it is, drop a drive in a FedEx envelope and ship it back home. That's certainly a great way to go.
Yeah.
You mentioned Narbox, this company that I'm working with right now, but they're their whole idea there is you have this device that you can easily copy your content to even while you're out shooting. So you pull a camera out of your card, stick it in the NAR box, it makes a backup right there. And even from that, you can copy to an external hard drive. And now you've got that external hard drive that you can ship back home or at least keep separate from you.
Yeah.
On the simplest side, you can have things like a thumb drive. I don't think I have one here, but I know I have a thumb drive that's 128 gigs. It is literally the size of my thumbnail. You plug it into your computer and all that sticks out is the handle. 128 gigs. It's insane, right?
That's crazy.
Okay,
That's
for video, that's not very much. But if you're shooting stills, you can put a lot of still images on 128 gigs. And so I would back up every day to that. And that little thing, that little thumb drive lived in my, the coin pocket on your jeans.
Yeah.
It just lived there.
Yeah.
So I always had that one there. My laptop was left behind at the hotel. And that was my extra copy of the data. So if my hotel got ransacked, my laptop went away, I knew I always had that little copy on me.
Yeah.
But lots of different ways to back up, but absolutely backing up.
Yeah, and that
professional
makes a lot of
job or
sense,
not.
especially if you're on a commission job where you have a client and the only reason for you being there is the photos. And,
in that case, you're building into your price.
Right?
You build into your price the cost of media backup, shipping for that backup, shipping it back home or back to wherever. I've done jobs before where it wasn't even about backup. It was more about timing, where the deadline was so tight that halfway through the shoot, we need to ship media back home so the editor can start working on it, start doing selects and doing a rough cut long before the shoot is even done. Just whatever the reason is, but you build it into the budget. If it's a job, you build it into the budget. Make the client pay for it. That's what it's supposed to be for.
That's what they're for. That's what clients are for, to spend money. Michael Grecco, man, what about you, man? How do you, if you're switching gears to, like, if you go putting on your commercial hat again, right?
Yeah,
you're out there.
We do exactly the same thing. Three backups. I have a different system than Joseph. 3 backups is really the way to go. Mm-hmm. And it all depends. It gets difficult if you're shooting multiple camera. Like last year at this time, I did a pilot. I was working on a pilot, and it was a 2 to 3 camera pilot. And thank God it wasn't 4K, but even with 2 to 3 cameras shooting a reality television pilot, we had like terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data. So backing it up, it really took every hard drive I had. But on a normal, and when people say, well, what about the cloud? The cloud becomes impossible. Cloud's great if you have time. Mm-hmm. So like my server is backed up to my OneDrive, but it does it over time.
Yeah.
Right.
It does it over time. If I need to make immediate copies of large amounts of data, I store on hard drive. But on the road, I took a couple of LaCie Thunderbolt drives that don't need the power, that are self-powered, and I stripped them out and I jacked them up with SanDisk 960 SSD drives.
Yeah.
And so I have a couple of those, and I set Synchronize X to mirror. I mostly shoot tethered, because my idea is if I have to get it to the computer to look at it anyway, why not get it to the computer once? So if I can, I shoot tethered, and then Synchronize X is synchronizing the folders, the shoot folder exactly and identically to the hard drive. So we have it in at least 2 places, and then at the end of the day, we can burn another hard drive. If we were shooting to card, we try to have 12 or 18 or 24 cards in the case, so that we don't write over the cards, and we keep the cards as a third backup. The strategy depends on what it is, but we're doing the same thing. The shoot laptop has a terabyte of data, which we'll leave on the shoot laptop, we'll leave on cards, and we'll take an extra hard drive. And then leaving a location, we do the same thing. The assistant hand carries the computer with the data on it. I might take the flash cards and put them in my briefcase. The client might hold the hard drive, or I have the hard drive in my briefcase. We do the same thing.
That's cool. So, yeah, treat it like precious cargo. And Michael, didn't you started a company called Photojoseph a while back, right? Are you
no,
still...
I have two companies. I have a product called Pro Storage, mm-hmm. which we have the patent on storing digital media in file cabinets and bankers boxes. So cool. For me, it was the logical thing, because we were storing. I have this philosophy that and I own 3 or 4 raids in the. I use the Synology raids. Love them, believe in them.
Yeah.
2 of them. One does Time Machine. One is our universal server, and they both back up each other to another offline, so they can't be hacked. They back up each other to another building, my garage that's finished in the. So I've got besides a cloud backup, I've got these raids. Mm-hmm. But I have this philosophy that there's never a reason to keep all the raw shoot data on raid, because as Joseph was mentioning, lots of 4K data. Just you shoot 3,000 images in a day and you've only picked 12. So we're on the raid, we're only taking our final retouched layered Photoshop files and putting them in a folder that Lightroom looks at. And it's literally called our final retouched image folder.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But then all the raw shoot data goes into the file cabinet and then goes into a Pelican case on mirrored drives. So
love it. Cool. All right, guys. Let's jump into the listener Q&A segment of the show. We're in the home stretch here. We're just about done here. And listeners and folks in the chat room, if you have a question for us, make sure you get that in there. Chris Berry's in there copying them out and putting them in a Google Doc for me to read, which I'm going to do right now. The first question is from Mark Harris. And Mark says, what do you carry on a plane and what do you check? Joseph, you want to take that? What do you carry with you? What's in your carry-on, and what do you trust to the airport gorillas that are throwing bags around?
I carry on all my camera gear and a change of underwear and a toothbrush, and I check all my clothes and everything else.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I try very hard not to check any camera gear. Obviously, that's not always possible. If you have more than one proper size case full of gear, then clearly you're going to have to check something. So I would say at that point, it's a case of duplicating what I want to make sure that when I get off the plane, I can shoot with everything that's in my hands.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I need for that first day that's not in my hands, and it's duplicates. You're always traveling with multiple bodies. Have at least one with you. Put another one in a case that gets checked. If you've got 10 lenses you're flying with, take your most critical lenses, your most precious lenses, whatever that are carry-on. The rest of them can get checked. Flashes, maybe take some with you, put some in the bag. Batteries, you have to take all those with you. You're not allowed to check batteries anymore. But I try not to check any camera gear. But obviously that's not always the case. So I want to at minimum make sure that when I get off the plane, I will be able to work as if nothing happened, or at least close to it.
With minimal interruption. Yeah.
Give it time for that bag to catch up with you. It's, I'm not so much worried about somebody stealing the bag. It's more that the bag went to Timbuktu instead of to wherever. And, that's the concern, is it might take an extra day or two to catch up with you.
Cool. All right. Go ahead, Michael.
The worst is having to shoot at noon and all your lighting gear with all your lighting control stuff doesn't make it. And it's like, I had once, I was doing a big shoot for Time magazine at one time, and I remember that happening and just being so frustrated at the lack of control, because you try to bring stuff that gives you the ability to control your environment if need be, when you can't control the appointment time of the shoot. So I agree with Joseph. In this day and age, though, I'm able to get medium format equipment and DSLR and everything on an airplane. So if it's a big enough shoot, if it's me and a DSLR case, my cameras always go on. In the old days when we were shooting with Fuji 680 cameras that had the tilt and shift in them, and you were shooting rolls of film, and that case is like a medium format camera case, and it was big. There was no way that would go on the plane. But today I've got 2 think tank cases. I've got 3 or 4 think tank cases. One for motion, one with my Panasonics for motion, one with Sony's for stills. I got a Hasselblad one for stills, and they can all go on the plane. Yeah. So
I want to hear from you guys. So I remember a couple of years ago, or several years ago, my friend Alex Lindsay did a show, and he was talking about, we were talking about travel. I forget how we got on a tangent, but he was talking, he made the controversial statement, which is even more controversial today, that if you check a small firearm with your, like if you have like 30 bags, 30 Pelican cases, and you put a firearm in one of them and you let airport security know and you fill out all the paperwork and all that, they have to treat all of your luggage like precious cargo. Have you guys heard of that?
I remember him saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, have either of you guys ever tried that? I mean, because the other problem with that is the destination. Now you're at your destination with a firearm, right? So,
well, sure. Look, it's not that. I'm with Joseph. I don't think that they abuse it. I don't think they steal it. I don't think they not treat it preciously. It's that, it's that human error or a late flight where it doesn't make it on the plane. Right. And I don't think that that's going to help. Yeah. Almost 90% of look, the real secret about traveling and having to take gear on is get to the plane early.
Right.
That's the number one secret, because the more time they have to make, the less chance it is. And almost every time I'm missing a bag, it's because there's no real connection time between the two flights if I have to connect. Right. So that's always the problem. Yeah. And it's not that anyone's really trying to steal the stuff or mishandle it, or it's broken, or it's that it never made its connection.
Yeah, that's fair. I also wanted to add that if you are traveling somewhere where, Michael's talking about that 12 o'clock shoot, you get off the plane and you don't have your gear. If you know that you have a shoot the moment you get off the plane and you have to check some gear, then prepare in advance for the contingency. Make sure that there's a rental house nearby that has the gear that you need. Make sure that there's a second plan. Make sure you have a backup plan. So if you get there and the stuff isn't there, you have another way to get it. Yeah. That's another way to go. There's a limit to how much you can carry on, right? You cannot pay for additional carry-on baggage. You can pay for additional checked baggage, but all the money in the world is not going to get you additional carry-on baggage unless you're going to pay for another ticket for another human being to get on a plane and carry another carry-on.
I think the scariest part for me, one of the scariest trips I went on, this is in Vietnam, and we were like bouncing from different city to different city, and one of the connections went from a large plane where there was no problem for me carrying my stuff on to a little puddle jumper where they were like, oh, no, sorry, you can't take that bag. We're going to have to take that from you. And it was like, really? There's a good grip of money in this bag, and I'm going to hand it over to you. What do you do?
I've literally told the flight attendant, that's $50,000 worth of camera equipment. Can I have your name? Because you're going to personally guarantee it, right? And on the small puddle jumpers, I've literally gone, and instead of it going through luggage, they do that, like the what is it called? The check-in, when you're instead of like curbside check-in, it gets checked.
Gate checked,
right?
Oh, gate check.
So they gate check it, but if you're on a small plane, the gate check is literally watching them put it on the plane and handing it to you when you get off. That's acceptable. You don't want it. When I say, you're never going to get lights and other stuff on, as Joseph says, into the carry-on.
Carry-on, yeah.
But I always say take your cameras, because the problem with the cameras is them getting thrown around and banged around.
Yeah. So Good Dog in the chat's got another good point. Ship your gear in advance.
Yeah.
If it's that critical, you can do that. And yeah, it'll cost more, but again, client paying for it. If it's a critical thing, if it's more cost effective to put your gear in a box and ship it out there before you get there, so you can confirm that it has arrived before you even get on a plane to leave, that can be quite helpful.
Yeah, I've done that. I did that at I was doing a workshop with Scott Bourne at Yellowstone National Park, and I needed a long lens, which I don't own, a really, really long lens, and I rented a lens from Borrow Lenses and had them ship it to me at the hotel. So I didn't have to carry it. And then when I finished with it, I shipped it back from Bozeman, and boom.
That's another great tip. Yeah. Rent the gear online. Don't even bring your own. Rent it online and have it shipped to your destination. Yeah, absolutely.
But that only works for a one-stop. That only works for one day and a one-stop shoot. So
none of these things are one size fits all. There's a lot of great tips here that it just depends on what you're doing.
Yeah,
well, I mean, this is where we act as executive, as producers when we're as photographers, we're the director and the producer of every shot, because we, you have to lay out the logistics of what's going to happen and how you're going to accomplish it. I've shipped gear just to save excess baggage money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
it depends on the budget, right?
UPS was half the amount of money, and we had the time to send lighting cases, and UPS was half the amount of money. And then it saved me from having an assistant having to travel and take cases and things like that.
Here's another question. This is from Christopher Barry. He says, what are some types of tracking devices for gear or bags and drones? Do you guys, I've seen some of these, and I've seen some Kickstarters where they're little things you throw in your bag so you can track it. Or I don't know. Do you guys care?
I haven't seen anything that's quite GPS level like that, but like I use the Tile little tracker devices, right?
Oh, you do use those.
And
okay.
Yeah, I use Tiles, and they're on my keys and pretty much in every camera bag. I got a bunch of them. And the cool thing about Tile, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but cool thing about Tile is I've been able to be
tomorrow though.
I will be tomorrow. Yeah. I've been able to be on the plane, pull out my phone, and verify that my checked baggage is actually on the plane. Because it's within range of the Tile, right? Yeah. And that's pretty cool. Now that's happened several times, and the range of a Tile is not infinite. So if I'm at the back of the plane and the bag is at the front of the plane, then it's probably not going to reach. But several times that I've done that, I've pulled out my phone and go, "Yep, our suitcase is on." That's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool.
Yeah, but and at the same token, the last place that it knew where it was that airport. So if I get on at JFK. And I hand my bag over. Okay, now it lost the connection at the check-in desk. I get on the plane and I'm looking at my phone, and sure enough, boom, it shows up on the plane. Great. Or it doesn't show up on the plane. I get to my destination. Say you're at LAX, you pull out the phone and you're waiting, you're hoping that it comes, and you're hoping that it shows up, and it never does. Well, odds are that it's nowhere near to be found.
Yeah.
But even that type of device, like I remember, this is a story from traveling into St. Louis, Missouri. This is like a Thanksgiving weekend. This is a family trip. This is half a decade ago, and I'm at the baggage claim and my bag's not there. And I'm asking, is it lost baggage? Is there any bag? No. And I describe the bag to me, sir. I described the bag. No. They go back and look. There's no bag back there. Back and forth for like 2 hours. I'm arguing with them. Finally, I go, can I just go look? And I walk into the room, and I literally walked in, spotted my bag, picked it up, turned around and walked out. And there it was. And had I had Tile at that time, I would have known it was within range. I would have been able to say, look, it's here.
Oh, yeah.
It's freaking here, man.
Cool.
That's not a bad idea.
I bought one of these Giro bags of a friend of mine. My entertainment attorney actually invented and owns this company, and he made because he travels so much, the ultimate rolling bag, because it has big wheels, and they patented these wheels, and it's a really smart idea. And the first variation he made on this bag has a GPS, a full-on battery charger and GPS tracker. Yes. And now with the new lithium battery rules, you have to take the GPS tracker out.
Yeah,
of course.
And you can't even put it in the bag. So I spent the extra $100 for the GPS tracker, and you're not allowed to take the GPS tracker on the plane anymore.
It works everywhere else except on the plane. All right, Trevor Pinocchi, who's a fan or a friend of both your show and my show, Joseph. He says, I'm trying to go out more in cold and inclement weather. Are there any brands that are go-to for the guests, especially gloves? I live in California, so I don't know. You guys, yeah. Well, me and Michael are Californians. Joseph, maybe you should take this one.
Yeah. Things like North Face. I don't know. You go into REI.
Yeah.
You go to REI, and you'll get the latest and greatest tech gear. And by tech, I don't mean high tech like computer tech, but what they consider tech gear in that space that will keep you warm, and it's as thin as it can possibly be, allow you to still use your hands.
And use your touch devices, right? With the little...
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Yeah, that's hard to find gloves that you can use your touch devices in that actually are any good. But beyond that, just go to an REI. I mean, those places are fantastic. They've got all the great cold weather clothes. And you don't want to end up looking like the Michelin Man. You want to have something nice and slim and feels good and looks good and lasts for a long time. Yeah. But North Face is a great brand.
In a couple of motorcycle shops I ride, I've seen... tips for gloves, for motorcycle gloves that are for your touch devices. Oh. So you put them over the fingers, and you can then work your
you can still use them.
Yeah, the problem I've always had, and I've shopped for gloves. I own a pretty decent pair of gloves that are as thin as they could be and still add some warmth to it, that are touch, whatever they call it, not tapped. But anyway, the touch thing on the surface, on the tips. They're fine if you're doing this, right? You've got your phone, and with one finger you're just scrolling. That's fine. But try to type with them, and it's almost impossible. They're too big. It's really hard to hit that contact point. Yeah. So I find that of the small character on your screen, so I find that I always end up taking the gloves off anyway to type. But at least you can take it out and swipe up and down. And of course, if you've got
text to type, baby, text to type.
Well, that does help too. But if you don't,
speech
yeah. If you're in a loud environment, it doesn't work. But at least with the iPhone 10 with Face ID, you don't have to take your gloves off just to open the phone. So that is my number one favorite thing about the phone.
I don't type anymore. You just have to make sure it doesn't make really bad mistakes.
I'm going to take 2 more questions here, guys. We're running a little bit long. The next one's from Good Dog. Good Dog says, do you take inventory of your gear, serial numbers, photos, etc. before traveling, and do you insure it for travel?
Well, you have to do that if you're, depending on what country you're going into and how much gear you're taking, because you should be getting a carnet or going into customs and getting them to stamp your inventory and prove that the equipment came out of the United States and can come back into the United States without getting taxed. So you're either going to do the free thing and you're either going to do the free thing and have the customs stamp it and verify that it's leaving, or you're going to, if you're going from country to country to country, the only thing the other countries will honor guaranteed is a carnet, and it usually costs you about $500. Oh, so if it's a serious job and you're doing serious cities, you need to do that.
And you pass that on to the client, right? So
yeah, and you have to, and you want to make sure the business insurance you have covers international travel. Otherwise, the business insurance isn't worth very much.
Wow. Joseph,
yeah, that's a good point. If whatever your insurance policy is, if you're going to go out of the country, make sure that you're covered. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have every piece of gear that comes into the studio gets inventoried. We have a big database of all the inventory with all the serial numbers, because my insurance policy that I pay for, the one that I have now, I don't actually have to list every piece of gear. I just have to have a total number. And so every year when it comes up for renewal, I look back and we take the total, and okay, this year this is how much we're insuring for, and that's the total on it. But I have every piece of gear listed so that if there's ever, a major theft or a fire or whatever, I know exactly what's in here. And it's not like every tiny little thing that comes in, a little $5 USB thing is not going to get inventoried, but anything, of reasonable values goes into the inventory database. If you wait until it's time to travel to do that, then that's one more thing you don't really want to be dealing with when you're trying to get ready to get on the plane.
Right.
Do it as the gear comes in. Do it as the gear comes in. You take that new lens out of the box. I know you want to play with it. I know you want to shoot with it. Take 5 minutes, add it to the database, put in the serial number, and now you can go play.
Yeah.
And then you've got it. And if you are traveling, I've done this before where I'm traveling. Like Michael said, you have a list of everything. You go through and you go, okay, I'm taking these six lenses and these 3 bodies and whatever. You just check them off the list and print them off, and now you got to print out with the serial number. So at least you have that in your mind. You've got that paper that shows what you're carrying with you.
Love it. All right. Here's the last question. You guys ready for it?
Ready.
Go.
This is from Trevor. Trevor says, any ideas for staying hydrated and fed that doesn't involve trail mix or power bars? I've had enough power bars to last a lifetime. I got a couple of those too. Thank you, Tim Engel.
Man, power bars are the thing, man.
Yeah, they're in my bag, man. They live in the bag. It's better to have them than not have them. Like, what do you do, Michael? You're on the job. What do you do?
I mean, I bring 1 bars with me, because if I don't make my upgrade, it's miserable. Life's miserable.
Uh-huh.
So,
listen to you. Listen to you.
Oh, it's so true. Come on, man. Come on.
I
Michael, he's not exactly short.
With the masses. Oh my God.
Yeah, but I'm 6 foot. I'm 200 pounds. It's
He's a big guy.
I gotta have something. I gotta have something. I gotta have a snack too. So I'm still okay with power bars. The thing is you only eat them when you need to eat them. Like when you're home, have a salad, and a turkey burger. Like we eat some real food at home. Eat some real food at home.
Did he just follow up turkey burger with real food?
Yeah.
Whole other topic.
Oh, I'm from
my personal preference is Cliff Bars. I like those. They got a lot of nice flavors, nice texture. It doesn't feel like you're eating a brick. I really like those. But yeah, those kind of protein bars, man, they go a long way.
Beef jerky,
I don't know.
man. Come on. Snap it to a Slim Jim. Come on.
You could do beef jerky. That
Beef
works.
jerky is like
Beef
a
jerky's
steak
good.
and a steak.
Turkey jerky too, right?
There you go. Turkey jerky. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. All right, guys.
No, outside of that, I honestly don't have any other suggestions outside of that. I think that is your best bang for your buck and bang for your weight and space that it's going to take up in your bag.
Yeah.
A couple of power bars, Cliff bars, whatever it is that you like, whatever it is that you can eat and will actually satisfy you a little bit. And then there's that old mantra, the Snickers satisfies. I mean, a Snickers bar, it's a lot of sugar, but man, that has saved me from eating the arm off of my neighbor so many times.
Snickers bar will give you life, right?
It really will.
It will.
It really will.
But then you crash so quickly. So
yeah, as long as you crash when you're back in the room, it's fine. You just need to get to the room.
It doesn't last that long. I travel with this herb called tricycline. And it keeps you from
sound like an herb.
It is an herb. And
wait. It's called tricycline?
Tricycline, yes.
Okay. That sounds like something you put in your IV. I mean, I
gotta Google this tricycline.
I do tricycling, and it keeps you from getting parasites, keeps you from getting stuff. So, I do the local, I always drink bottled water. Mm-hmm. And I always drink bottled water, and I always try to, I'll take tricycline before I eat, and try to keep well hydrated though. So
yeah,
I don't know about this herb. I don't know about herb. Oh shoot, I haven't plugged that in. I can't put my screen up there. Definition of tricycline: a crystalline saturated tricyclic terpene hydrocarbon, C10H16, found in crude alpha pinene and also made synthetically, called also cycline, not used systematically. Doesn't sound like an herb, my brother.
That was a word salad.
This is a formula. It's a particular formula.
You got to send us that. Send me that so I can put it in the show notes for this.
I just Googled tricycline. It comes up right on top.
No, Michael, whatever you're recommending, send me a link to it so I can put it in the link in the show notes. Yeah, that's crazy. All right, guys, we're at the end of the show. Joseph Linaschke.
That's me.
Where would you like people to go to connect with you, follow you, support you, all that stuff?
Anything with Photojoseph in the name is going to do you. Go to the Twitter, go to the Facebook, go to the YouTube, search for Photojoseph, and that's me. And of course on YouTube, youtube.com/Photojoseph. That's where the channel is, the live show. We are, I was just looking, I was like 3 followers away from 15,000 subs. So come on, people who are listening to the show, go do it right now. Let's see if we can do this thing, finish this before the show actually ends.
I need to unsubscribe. Awesome. I got to keep you away
from
that 15,000.
Unsub. Damn.
I'm going to unsubscribe now too.
Wow. All right, you guys.
This is crab mentality, Joseph. You got to work for your.
You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. Wow.
Awesome.
Wow.
All right, Michael Grecco, man. Where should people go to look at some of your awesome work, man?
Same thing. Michael Grecco, one word, will either get you to the website, and 2 C's, Grecco, will either get you to the website or will get you to my Instagram or Twitter, and Facebook, I think, is Michael Grecco Photography. But the smaller will get you around also.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you both for coming on. This has been fantastic. This has been one of the better TWiPs. I couldn't have picked a better couple of co-hosts to talk about to represent each side of the spectrum. You guys are great, and thanks to the chat room for all your awesome questions and for holding down in there, and Chris Berry for helping us keep the show going. Much appreciated. All right, and TWiP listeners, if you want to stay up to date on all things This Week in Photo, all you got to do is head over to thisweekinphoto.com. And if you want to follow our podcast or subscribe to our podcast, just go to thisweekinphoto.com/subscribe, and you will see all the shows that you can subscribe to. And of course, on our YouTube channel, you can subscribe there, and also click that bell on the YouTube page so that you're notified when we get ready to do another one of these things, one of these live streams. All right. And with that, it is time to take that lens cap off. This is TWiP.